Okay? Think about all of that in the context of the third term of this paradigm. And the third term is the Maafa. M-A-A-F-A. And let me just get some clarity here. That's a Kiswahili term. And I was looking, I said, I want something that we can use to claim this period of history that we interpreted. We say what it meant. Now, I didn't want it referring to anybody else's whatever, suffering. I wanted it to be ours. So I had friends around me who spoke Kiswahili, so I said, look, give me a term for disaster. And that's how it came to be. And that was in 1979.
Right on.
Then it just took off. And we have it connected to our spirit. But we use that. That's not about the people who actually created the language of Kiswahili. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That comes out of a diasporic consciousness of the need to organize on Pan-African levels. Okay? Okay, so Maafa. Maafa shatters our reality. It takes away our collective consciousness. Maafa, the great disaster. It teaches that the best thing to be is an individual and non-African at that. The Maafa disconnects us from each other. It disconnects us from our traditions, and it's our traditions that gave us strength. The Maafa can be understood as cultural genocide. Now remember all the things I just said about the importance of culture. Okay? The Maafa must be understood in cultural terms. It robbed African people of our cultural identity, which in turn acted to prevent collective organization in our own interest. So we have great difficulty to it. The Maafa is a consistent, systematic, ongoing attempt to separate people of African descent from our cultural foundation and to effectively erase our cultural memory. So that the Maafa is it's a relentless psychic attack and cultural assault against people of African descent. It disrupts culture. The Maafa causes disorganization. We wonder why we can't organize. It causes that. It does it intentionally. And it causes fragmentation. And it causes chaos in the existence of Africans in America, the Americas, the Caribbean, and on the continent. I haven't even gone into what we have seen happening on the continent of Africa. You see the Maafa on the continent of Africa in ways that at least we recognize it here. There it isn't even recognized as Maafa, but it is straight up Maafa. So we got a lot of work to do. This work is extremely important. Now, the Maafa can be understood as a force, as a destructive process. The counter force to the Maafa is the resistant, proactive, maroon energy of which Asa Hilliard talks about, writes about. Maroon energy. The spirit of African resistance is always consistently and intimately linked to the affirmation of African cultural identity and retention. You could do a study of that. In fact, Haile Gerima is now doing intensive, the research is really blowing my mind. That's going to be his next film. It's on Maroonage, and not just talking about Jamaica and the mountains. What he's doing is going to blow people's minds here. And it's what we need, what our people need. Okay. The destructiveness of the Maafa is unprecedented and must be carefully understood. And I think I'm not going to keep on doing that, but I am arguing that it is the most destructive act that has ever been perpetrated by one group of people against another. And this claim can be supported. It can be supported quantitatively by the numbers of people who were transported, the numbers who died, the numbers who were killed, the numbers who were enslaved, and the suddenness and intensity of the disruption. Think about that. How would people survive that? Dislocation, distance represented by the physical circumstances of the trade in human lives. The system was also racially determined as defined by genetic, biological relationship, and culture. Okay? African people were deprived of all the accoutrements and factors of the culture with which they were familiar, such as language, belief systems, sanctioning mechanisms, and rituals, and so forth. And we could go on and on. Okay? It is obviously the most severe crime suffered by any group of people ever. We got to keep that in mind. This crime lasted not for a year or two, or even 20, 50, or 100 years. Rather, it represented a prolonged period of psychic torture which lasted for over 3 centuries as a legally sanctioned practice,
Right.
and which continues in present times as an institutionalized and systematic assault against the descendants of the imprisoned and enslaved Africans. That's Maafa. Okay? Causing separations and disorientation between us, among us, fear, anxiety, loss, insecurity. This caused deep cultural and psychic trauma from which we have never recovered. Okay? Now, I think that a legacy of the Maafa is our lack of organization, our lack of vision, particularly. A people who are in a state of depression cannot have vision. And spirit affects that. Okay? Wholeness affects that. You have to be whole in order to have vision and to see yourself as powerful. The legacy of the Maafa is a failure to identify as Africans. In the Maafa, our consciousness becomes disconnected. We lose historical consciousness. Remember Dr. Clark, that's why he talked about that so much, the importance of an historical consciousness and what history means to us. And he did it relentlessly. And reached so many of us. And so many of us now work in the service of our people because of Dr. Clark.
That's right.
Because of what he did. When we lose historical consciousness, we begin to identify our colonial prisons as home. I think that 911 raised that question in our minds.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
What ties us to this place right here?
Nothing.
Who's to say that we cannot make our home where our home is?
Yes. We'll stay there. We're going to stay there.
But our consciousness in the Maafa becomes, that is, we think as Americans, Guyanese, Jamaicans, Asians. All right? We got to think about what does that mean? What does it do to your consciousness?